Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There are multifarious miseries in material existence. Those pertaining to the body and the mind, those imposed by other living entities, and those imposed by natural disturbance. But a sadhu is not disturbed by such miserable conditions because his mind is always filled with Krishna consciousness, and thus he does not like to talk about anything but the activities of the Lord. Maharaj Ambarisha did not speak of anything but the pastimes of the Lord. Vachansi Vaikunta Gunanuvarnane, Srimad Bhagavatam 9.18. He engaged his words only in glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sadhus are always interested in hearing about the activities of the Lord or his devotees. Since they are filled with Krishna consciousness, they are forgetful of the material miseries. Ordinary conditioned souls, being forgetful of the activities of the Lord, are always full of anxieties and material tribulations. On the other hand, since the devotees always engage in the topics of the Lord, they are forgetful of the miseries of material existence. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, so this is an explanation of the culture of devotees. That's why it says, engage constantly in chanting and hearing about me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The sadhus do not suffer from material miseries because they are always filled with thoughts of my pastimes and activities. Well, here is an explanation of the culture of genuine sadhus. Why? Well, we should understand what is the way to recognize a genuine sadhu. Genuine sadhus are constantly enchanting and hearing about Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because of that, sadhus don't suffer from material miseries because they're always filled with the thoughts of Krishna's pastimes and activities. That should be our culture. Culture means how you do things, Hare Krishna. So, if we follow what's being said here, we can be a sadhu also. What is a sadhu? It's someone who's engaged constantly in chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and hearing about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, chanting and hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because of that, real sadhus do not suffer from material miseries because they're always filled with thoughts of Krishna's pastimes and activities. Well, to be filled with thoughts of Krishna's pastimes and activities, you have to make an effort. Instead of hearing mundane things, you develop the culture of hearing significant things about Krishna and his pastimes and activities. That's more or less what we're doing every day. And hearing about the pastimes and activities of the Lord. So this chanting and hearing about Krishna, that is, there are people who every day they read the newspaper. In fact, they get the newspaper delivered to their house. And on weekends, they get the really big newspaper, uh, and and they can be reading that all day long almost. It's so many pages in the Sunday editions. Yeah. Uh, but the devotees are more interested in constantly chanting Gita. They don't want to hear about what's happening in this war or that war, this hospital or that hospital, this country or that country. They want to hear about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, every day there's news, and there's newspapers, and there's the internet, and you can spend, hours and hours reading and hearing news, right? But the devotee spends hours and hours hearing and chanting about the glories of the Lord. That's a major difference between materialists and spiritualists. Materialists are hearing every day the stock market uh, uh, quotes. They're saying which stock is going up, which one is coming down, and basically that's their culture, up or down, right? So are you up today or are you down today? So that's not a good life to have. Oh, they might be making a lot of money, or they might be losing a lot of money. You don't always make a lot of money in the stock market. You can also lose a lot of money. Why? Because it's a type of gambling. If you lose money, what happens? Somebody else makes money. In other words, when you lose money on the stock market, somebody else is getting that money, or is winning that money. You see it more clearly if you go to a gambling house, and you're playing poker or you're playing some kind of gambling game. When you lose, you see people, they collect the money, bring it to their side from your side. But when you're talking about the stock market, you don't see it that clearly that whatever money you lose, somebody else gains that money. But you don't see them actually pulling that money toward themselves, right? But believe me, they are getting the money that you're losing. So that puts a person in anxiety because at one moment they had the money in their hands, and then they bet that money, and now they lost it. Now it goes out of their hand to somebody else's hands. Um, so if you don't want to be caught in that type of situation, don't gamble and don't speculate. Now, there are some people who are very, very rich by speculating and gambling. Okay, that's their karma. But for a devotee, you should not gamble and you should not speculate because that will take the mind off of Krishna completely. And every day you'll see whether you're up or you're down. So that's not a life. That's anxiety. Every day you're trying to see whether you're up or down. Um, so uh, instead of being in the up down culture, we should be in a culture of Krishna consciousness where it's always up about knowledge of Krishna. That's real spiritual advancement, learning more and more about Krishna. There's no down in that. It's only up. God, and like I said, in gambling, it's up or down every day. But in Krishna consciousness, always up with more knowledge of Krishna and more happiness in chanting Hare Krishna and having a simple and happy life without this up-down anxiety in the material world. And that's what it is. If you're a stock market, let's say, speculator, either you're up or you're down every day. And yeah, some people are pretty good at it, but still they they have anxiety, and some people like that type of anxiety. You know, they taking risks on betting on a stock to go up, and they study that stock just like we study Shastra every day. They're studying stocks every day, and what they do is they'll go to the business that has these stocks and they'll talk with the CEO and they'll walk around the company, talk to some of the employees. They want to see, you know, what's going on in that company that they may invest in. So, and then they have to decide which stocks are under uh, uh, under uh, performing and which stocks are uh, overperforming. The ones that are underperforming but have that they have a great potential, uh, then and the stocks that are overperforming that have a possibility of tanking. They have to make all these decisions. And that's why every day when they wake up, like let's say you are living in California, you have to wake up like in the Brahma Muhurta to not figure out what's happening in the stock market in Chicago or on the East Coast because and then actually it's 24 hours because when the stock market closes in the United States, it opens in foreign countries. So some people are engaged almost 24 hours a day, seeing whether they're up or down on the stock market. So therefore, it consumes your consciousness 100% almost when you're in a stock market better. We'll call it betting because it is a type of betting rather than an art. Of course, there's some people who are really good at it, and other people uh, they get they always lose money instead of make money. My brother would always lose money, but he would always lie and say, "Oh yeah, I made money this week," but he was always lying. Of course, he never invested a lot of money. He invested small amounts, and it was his because was not Krishna conscious. This was his religion. You know, every morning looking at the stock market and making small investments. And most of the time he made mistakes, but he never admitted his mistakes. He was, oh yeah, today was a good day. Anyway, that was all he knew about life, up or down on the stock market. But devotees, they're always learning more and more about Krishna. They're always going up. They're not going down. There's no uh, downward spiral in Krishna consciousness if you follow the regulative principles and always hear and chant about the glories of the Lord. So here in this verse, Canto 3, chapter 25, verse 22, it says, such a sadhu engages in staunch devotional service. Staunch is very, very focused. What's it say? What's the definition of staunch? Staunch. Very, very dedicated to something.
Loyal and committed in attitude.
All right.
strong or firm construction.
Right. So, such a sadhu engaged in staunch devotional service to the Lord without deviation. For the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances within the world. And in the purport, it says, a person in the renounced order of life, a sannyasi, is also called a sadhu because he renounces everything: his home, his comfort, his friends, his relatives, and his duties to friends and to family. He renounces everything for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A sannyasi is generally in the renounced order of life, but his renunciation will be successful only when his energy is employed in the service of the Lord with great austerity. It is said here, therefore, Bhaktim kurvanti ye dridham. A person who seriously engages in the service of the Lord and is in the renounced order of life is a sadhu. A sadhu is one who has given up all responsibility to society, family, and worldly humanitarianism simply for the service of the Lord. As soon as he takes his birth in the world, a person has so many responsibilities and obligations to the public, to the demigods, to the great sages, to the general living beings, to his parents, to the family forefathers, and to many others. When he gives up all such obligations for the sake of the service of the Supreme Lord, he is not punished for such renunciation of obligation. But if, for sense gratification, a person renounces all such obligations, he is punished by the law of nature. This is very nice information. Yeah, there are people that renounce everything uh, for sense gratification, and there are people who renounce everything for Krishna consciousness. So in both cases, they're renouncing. But when you renounce everything for the sake of service of the Supreme Lord, it's wonderful. And if you renounce everything for the sake of sense gratification, it's selfish and horrible. So we have to decide what we want to renounce for in life. And when we renounce all the different obligations, we're punished by the laws of nature. So uh, people who have children but renounce obligation of raising the children, they'll put them in an orphanage or something like that. That's very, very sinful. Uh, and when they renounce or if they use contraceptives, that's very, very sinful. In other words, uh, if a person basically renounces their obligations for sense gratification, that is horrible, and they'll suffer. However, if a devotee renounces mundane obligations in order to engage in spiritual life fully, that is considered successful and a good thing to do. So we see that there are uh, sadhus who, at an early age, renounce family and all obligation and now live as a genuine sadhu the rest of their life. However, if there's a sadhu who renounces all obligations, the family and everything, and becomes a sadhu, but later on stops being a sadhu and goes back to mundane life. That is really uh, and the attempt to give up responsibilities or avoid responsibilities, and it actually uh, hurts the lives of other people. Uh, and the so-called sadhu will suffer. Like for example, when there's a person who's a sadhu who has many devotees, and he bloops, meaning he leaves his responsibility in order to get married or go back and do some business or something like that. That's a very, very terrible thing because he's going to uh, basically hurt many people by doing a thing like that. Someone gets initiated and they have full confidence in their guru, and later on, if the guru leaves and no longer wants to have any disciples, uh, that's like one of the most horrible things that can happen to someone in their life. So, therefore, if somebody wants to be a disciple, they have to be serious. Because another horrible thing is a guru accepts someone as a disciple, and then the so-called disciple leaves. That's another horrible thing. So the obligation that one accepts voluntarily in order to make spiritual advancement, it has to be kept intact in order to be a real person and in order to get the mercy of the Lord. If someone whimsically wants to get initiated and then after a year or two they leave, that is, or after 10 or 20 years they leave, that is a very bad thing because it weakens the determination of other devotees to be in Krishna consciousness when they see big, so-called big devotees leave Krishna consciousness. And it's happened a lot. Therefore, we are defined by the vows that we make in life. A vow is a sacred uh, statement of accepting responsibility. What is a responsibility? Well, at the moment of initiation, the guru says, what are the four regulative principles? No meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication. That's a vow. You promise that for the rest of your life, you're not going to do those four things. If you break the vow, what happens is you are no longer a respectable person. A respectable person makes a vow and keeps it. A disrespectful person makes vows and breaks them. So the vow that we make defines who we are. Therefore, the vows that devotees take, they're sacred vows, and they're not meant to be broken. They're meant to be followed for the rest of one's life. And that defines who they are. But if you break vows, then people can't trust such people who break their vows. And therefore, and it also hurts sincere people because they uh, had the expectation of the association of a genuine so-called devotee, and now this devotee uh, lets them down by leaving Krishna consciousness. So it's a real shock in the life of a person. And it can be very disorienting, especially there are, sometimes in the past there were examples of devotees that had hundreds of disciples and then they left. And it was very, very hard on those disciples. Okay, so if we make a vow, that defines who we are. And if we break a vow, that is like a very, very bad thing to do because we basically we're a cheater. We cheat people. We make a vow to follow the regulative principles, and then we break the vow. That is cheating, and uh, and we'll have to unnecessarily suffer uh, because we have cheated ourselves and we're cheating other people by breaking our vows. So it says here, such a sadhu engages in staunch, I mean, really very, very uh, dedicated devotional service to the Lord without deviation. For the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances within the world. Now, this, for a person that doesn't know much about Krishna consciousness, when they read this, they say, oh my God, these Hare Krishnas, they're anti-family. But no, when it says renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances within the world. So in Krishna consciousness, we don't uh, renounce the family, but a family that is Krishna conscious stays together, but not for sense gratification, for uh, engaging in devotional service to the Lord. That kind of family is bona fide. But a family is just a group of people that get together. They have some things in common, uh, but most of their life is just sense gratification. That is rejected in Krishna consciousness. So the mundane family and the spiritual family, two different things. The spiritual family is an eternal obligation. The mundane family will only last in this lifetime, and it will not lead to uh, being liberated from the cycle of birth and death. Uh, and therefore, we have to understand what's the difference between the spiritual family and the mundane family. Now, it's not that hard to understand. Mundane family is mostly engaged in sense gratification, or all engaged in sense gratification and material identification. I am this body. And the spiritual family is I am the eternal servant of Krishna, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life engaged in devotional service. And I am not this body. I have a spiritual soul which is not related at all in any way with the body. Therefore, I want to always act on the level of soul, not act on the level of body. Therefore, it says here, a person in the renounced order of life, a sannyasi, is also called a sadhu because he renounces everything: his home, his comfort, his friends, his relatives, and his duties to friends and to family. He renounces everything for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, when you renounce everything, that doesn't mean that you renounce Krishna consciousness. Some people say, oh, you have to renounce everything. No. You accept Krishna consciousness, but you give up mundane life. So that's renouncing everything. It's renouncing everything that's mundane and accepting everything that is spiritual. So there's always going to be something that you accept. You don't renounce everything, right? But you renounce everything that is not related to Krishna. Yes, Abhi, what is your question?
Now, the service of the Lord, right?
Yes.
So how would people misinterpret that to say Renounce Krishna consciousness because Krishna consciousness is service.
Because they don't hear properly. They just hear renounce everything. Yeah. When you don't hear properly, then you make mistakes. But if you hear properly, you don't make mistakes. And when you're not sure about what you hear, you should ask questions. You should not go away with misconceptions. You should always clear misconceptions by asking questions. That's why every day I always say, are there any questions? If no one asks a question, that is a sign that either they were sleeping while they were hearing. And many people can do that. They can sort of sleep while they're hearing, supposed to be hearing, which means they're not hearing properly. Or their mind is, you know, uh, wandering while they're hearing, thinking about other things. The one thing you learn in Krishna consciousness is to focus your hearing when you're in class. That's the number one thing to learn is how to hear very, let's say, attentively. Yes, that's. Let's say you're in school and you're not paying attention to the teacher, right? And that's not good. You know, like you're passing notes to friends and you're writing, oh, this person's an idiot. You know, you write that and you pass it to your friend. And the friend passes the note back to, yeah, you're right. You know? That means you're not listening to the teacher. You're passing notes to each other. Or nowadays, you don't have to pass notes. You're on the internet. Yeah. And you're passing information from one to another. And it's all nonsense. What did you eat yesterday? You know, I had a hamburger. Oh, you really ate something good, you know. So you're talking all nonsense, you know, while the class is going on. Right? But you're doing it in a more subtle way through the internet. You know, it looks like you're studying, you know, but actually your mind is on other things. Uh, yeah, so we have to develop the ability to focus our minds on what's being said and not let the mind be wandering. And that's why we come to class. We learn to focus on Krishna consciousness for 1 hour or half an hour or whatever. And that kind of focusing is very, very beneficial. But if we focus on nonsense, that will distract our ability to hear Krishna consciousness because we're focusing always on nonsense. Right? What happened in the stock market? And talking nonsense on the phone with other people. When you get a cell phone, a young kid is given a cell phone, that's like giving a minor a car. Uh, a minor who gets a car, in other words, they're not at the age where they can legally drive a car, but they get access to a car. They can kill themselves very easily or kill somebody else, right? And the same way, when you get a cell phone that's not limited, then the parents don't really know what the kid is using the cell phone for. I mean, they assume that they have to have the cell phone because the teacher said you need a cell phone in order to know what the homework is going to be. But that is not actually true. You can always ask somebody else what the homework is. You don't have to have a cell phone. Uh, but that's the excuse for giving a cell phone to a kid. And as soon as they get that cell phone, uh, and they go into their room, they lock the door, you don't know what they're using the cell phone for. You know, they could be all over the world. Yes.
What age do you recommend to get a
To
cell
give
phone?
the cell phone, no age.
No age.
Actually, you don't really need a cell phone. I mean, obviously, someone says, "Oh no, my boss said I have to have a cell phone. You know, I'm working, I have to have a cell phone." Okay, but this is a very, dangerous thing because it can teach you to not focus on Krishna consciousness. You be on the cell phone all the time. So it's a very powerful, let's say, instrument, a powerful way of being distracted. You can be on the cell phone all day long, you know, but not necessarily hearing Krishna consciousness. So you have to be very responsible to have a cell phone in the same way that you have to be very responsible to have a gun, right? If you misuse the gun, you can kill someone. And a cell phone is the same thing. If you misuse it, you can miss the opportunity to be Krishna conscious because now you're going all over the place, meditating on the wrong things and spending so much time, talking nonsense with your friends or other people. So everything has the right use and the wrong use. In every situation, there's the right way and the wrong way. To be able to focus on hearing about Krishna on a regulated basis requires a lot of self control. It's much easier just to talk nonsense all day long, right? And do nonsense things. But to be focused on Krishna consciousness 24 hours a day, that's a big responsibility and it requires a lot of self control. And you're controlling yourself not for mundane things, but for making spiritual progress. So today it says, such a sadhu engages in staunch devotional service to the Lord. Well, that is a example of what is a devotee. He has a staunch devotional service. In other words, he doesn't deviate from being engaged in devotional service to Krishna without deviation. There it is. For the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances within the world. Now, does this mean that we are anti-family in Krishna consciousness? No. What if your family is Krishna conscious? So you wouldn't renounce them. So the best thing is when the family is Krishna conscious, then the daughter or son does not have to renounce the family. It's only in the case where the family is really only interested in sense gratification that has to be renounced. Now, it shouldn't be renounced in a brutal way, like you tell your mother and father, "I hate you." that's, that's not the right way to renounce. Renounce means that you don't accept any more mundane family, and let's say, practices.
Obligation.
Huh?
Obligations.
Well, sometimes there are obligations that you have to do. I mean, like for example, let's say your mother and father sacrifice, a lot of things so that you can get a good education, and then you renounce them because you say, "Well, they're not Krishna conscious, so I don't want to have anything to do with." That's pretty much of a change up. Your family spent so many years and dollars, even getting you a good education and so forth, and now you ignore them. So that's not a very nice thing to do. However, if you help your family become Krishna conscious, that's the right thing to do. So, and the way to do that is not by being uh, uh, one of these people that says, unless you surrender to Guru Dev, I'm no longer your son. No, that's not the way to do it. It's not the way to help your family. You have to, you have to become more gentle, more, let's say, uh, merciful, and more patient to help your family become Krishna conscious. In fact, it's harder to preach to your family than to outside people because the family, raised you. They know all the things you did when you were a kid and so forth. And now you're trying to educate them. Krishna consciousness. They have to be very careful. What is more important is the way you act, not on what you actually say. So if you become a better person in the eyes of your family by becoming Krishna conscious, eventually they will take you seriously. But if you become a fanatic, then they'll hate Krishna consciousness because you're giving them an ultimatum. Either you become Krishna conscious or I'm not your kid anymore. It's not a good thing to do. So we have to learn to be very, very respectful to our family members, but not to the point where if they're eating meat, we eat meat with them. Right? But we can politely say, well, I've become a vegetarian now, and leave it at that. Okay, well, you want to eat healthy food, all right, we'll accept that. But if you become adamant, I won't sit at the table with you, I won't talk to you anymore, like that. That's like more or less a betrayal in the eyes of the family. So we have to be if we become a devotee, we become more humble and more patient. And we don't become, uh, either it's like this or there's nothing. There's only my way or the highway. They say in English, my way or the highway. So we have to be more patient and more humble when we become a devotee. But we don't violate the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. Yeah, one day I was forced to go back to a family, uh, let's say, a family, not meeting, but a family. Uh, it was like some kind of a um, uh,
Reunion.
yeah, family meeting, right? And it wasn't like a meeting; it was a family program. And I went out of respect for my uncle, and and then they were having dinner, so I sat down with them. I knew what they were going to do, so I brought my own prasadam with me, right? And that really got my uncle upset. You know, he tried to force me to eat, what they had cooked. And I said, no, I can't eat this. I'm a vegetarian. I can't eat meat anymore, or I don't want to eat meat anymore. And he got really upset. Well, you were eating before. I thought, no, but that was before. This is now. But anyway, I want to argue with them, you know. So, but I was pretty, adamant. Well, what I did is I brought my own prasadam because I knew he was going to, they were going to be eat meat. So, but I could have not come, but I didn't want to insult him by not coming to this program. So I came and I had my own prasadam. And although he was a little bit upset, anyway, he forgot about it after dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not eat his food. But he did give me, a little tumbler of whiskey to drink, and I did take it in my hand and I raised it up when they were making a toast, and I just put it down, but I didn't drink it. And by the way, there's another person that does that. That's Modi. He'll pick up the glass of champagne. They'll make he'll talk some hocus pocus nonsense. And then afterwards he puts it down again. He doesn't touch it. Because sometimes you have to do things like that to keep peace in the family. you know, or keep peace in as in a program that's going on, and everybody's raising the champagne glass and toasting. So he always raises the glass, but he doesn't drink. He just quietly puts it back down. So there are situations that become uncomfortable when you're a devotee, when you're dealing with even your own family, because they haven't become Krishna conscious. You became Krishna conscious. They didn't become Krishna conscious. But if they see you're humble and respectful, but you don't violate your principles, they give you respect for that because at least you have principles, right? The people will respect the person who has principles, good principles, that is. So when you become Krishna conscious, well, let's say when you're born, you're already born with friends and enemies. Oh, you didn't even do anything, but it's going to be friends and enemies. And when you become Krishna conscious, again, there's going to be a new set of friends and enemies. So you just have to tolerate that and not, let's say, unnecessarily insult people, especially relatives. You know, so it's like walking on a path where there are eggs. So you don't want to step on any eggs. You have to walk very carefully, do not step on any eggs. That's the same way when you go to family programs or other types of programs where there's old acquaintances and so forth. Not to insult them, but at the same way, not to violate your principles. Sometimes at family reunions, devotees may violate the principles, right? Because you're in basically you're in bad association with your own family. But if are very humble and just say, okay, well, I can't drink wine, but I will drink, grape juice. So then now you can make the toast, and they're drinking wine and you're drinking, so you have to be creative to avoid getting into arguments with your family. Hare Krishna. All right, so now, uh, such a sadhu engages in staunch devotional service to the Lord without deviation. For the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances within the world. We have to be careful reading this because let's look at the purport. It says, a person in the renounced order of a sannyasi is also called a sadhu because he renounces everything, his home, his comfort, his friends, his relatives, and his duties to friends and to family. He renounces everything for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A sannyasi is generally in a renounced order of life, but his renunciation will be successful only when his energy is employed in the service of the Lord with great austerity. It is said here, therefore, Bhaktim kurvanti ye dridam, a person who seriously engages in the service of the Lord and is in the renounced order of life is a sadhu. A sadhu is one who has given up all responsibility to society, family, and worldly humanitarianism simply for the service of the Lord. As soon as he takes his birth in the world, a person has so many responsibilities and obligations to the public, to the demigods, to the great sages, to the general living beings, to his parents, to the family, forefathers, and to many others. When he gives up all such obligations for the sake of service of the Supreme Lord, he is not punished with such renunciation of obligation. But if for sense gratification a person renounces all such obligations, he is punished by the law of nature. So, therefore, there is bona fide renunciation and there is unbona fide renunciation. If you renounce all types of sense gratification to engage in devotional service, that's bona fide. If you renounce obligations in order to engage in sense gratification, that is really horrible. And we should never do such a thing. Like, for example, if you make a vow, at initiation, they ask you, so what are the rules and regulations? No meat eating, no gambling, no success, no intoxication, and always chanting 16 good rounds every day. If we violate that, that is a very serious thing. So we have to learn to what defines us. It's the vows that we take. That's what defines who we are. If we make serious vows, like no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication, that's a serious vow, and we keep it, we are understood to be a good devotee. It identifies who we are. And if we break that vow, then we're basically a rascal. So it's better not to make any vows than to make vows and break them. Yeah, I did. When I got initiated, I made a vow. I said, if I ever leave Krishna consciousness, I'll commit suicide. So I have never left because I don't want to commit suicide. But yeah, I made a vow. I made a vow that if I ever left, I would just commit suicide because I would be violating everything I promised to do. And that's not a good thing to do. Okay, are there any questions about this verse? When it says, for the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances within the world. Well, what if your family is Krishna conscious? Do you renounce them? No. So you don't really renounce the family if the family is Krishna conscious. And if you can act in such a way that the family respects you and takes up Krishna consciousness, then you don't have to reject them. Right? If they don't take up Krishna consciousness, you should always remain friendly and respectful because it's your family, right? But if they're demons insisting that you eat meat and this thing and that thing, then you just stay away from them. You stay at a respectful distance. You don't become angry or insult them or anything like that. That's the worst thing you can do.
Thanks, Maharaj. One question.
Yeah.
We have read the Kardamuni's story as well. So here we don't consider Kardamuni as a sadhu.
You asking a question?
Yes.
Why do you think he's not a sadhu?
Because he left Devahuti and
He left what?
he left Devahuti. He went to preach the Krishna consciousness to the world.
That's what Prabhupada did too. He left his family to preach Krishna consciousness all over the world. So that's not a bad thing.
So we don't call that as a renounce.
Huh?
Do we call that as a renouncement?
It is a bona fide renunciation. Right, Maharaj?
Let's say it's and that's a greater renouncement. Right? He's renouncing the home and hearth and becoming a mendicant itinerant sadhu, which is big, what you would call big renunciation. He's renouncing all his sense gratification, the family and everything. And now he's making a bigger family. That's Krishna conscious family.
Yeah, even in that case, in his case, family is Krishna conscious.
If the family is Krishna conscious, uh, well, that's good. So by going away and preaching Krishna conscious, you haven't rejected the family.
You will understand.
Right.
There is an agreement.
Yeah. But if the family is not Krishna conscious and you go away, well, that is necessary. That's what Prabhupada did. That's what all sadhus do. They don't renounce the family exactly, but they have, just like, let's say you get a job, but you have to live in Japan, but you're getting a lot more money and so forth. So you leave your family that live in India or live somewhere else. Does that mean that you renounced your family? No. It's just that you're not living with them anymore because your job is somewhere else. Like you're here in the United States and your family is what, in India, right? So you haven't renounced the family.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't renounced you. It's just that you have an obligation somewhere else. So, and you will see your family, not every day, but you can be talking to them every day. So you haven't actually renounced them. But when you renounce a family that's always, breaking the principles of Krishna consciousness, uh, that's a necessity because, how can you associate with them if they're always breaking the principle? You know, you always remain respectful, but from a distance in that case. The worst thing is, though, getting in arguments with your family. That's the worst thing you can do. You don't want to do that because then they'll hate Krishna consciousness. They're not going to hate you. They're going to hate Krishna consciousness. They're going to say, "Oh, this Hare Krishna movement has taken my son away from me," and then they'll hate it. But if they see that you've become a better person and more respectful and more humble and things like that, they'll say, "Well, I thought it was bad, but now I realize it was the best thing for my son and for me also, because now I'm also a vegetarian and I'm also chanting Hare Krishna, and so if you become brutal with your family, they'll hate Krishna consciousness. If you become more gentle, more respectful, they'll love Krishna consciousness. They'll say, "Well, it can't be that bad. Look, my son has become much better than before." So what counts is uh, the uh, uh, the way you relate to your family. If you relate to them more respectfully, if you relate to them with more sensibility, like always keep in touch, and you're not always trying to preach to them, but you always keep in touch. You're always respectful, and you give them gifts. And there's what you would call give and take, dadati, partichinanti, and so forth. You give them gifts, and you are respectful, and you're always, uh, you know, friendly, not antagonistic at all. And then little by little, the family will say, "Well, look, I can't really argue about my son becoming Krishna conscious because he's become much better than he was before, much more respectful, much more kind, and he's always doing nice favors for us. So we accept what he did, what the decision he made in his life." Right? But if you say, "Look, if you don't surrender this Guru Dev, I'm never going to talk to you again," you start talking like that, they're going to hate Krishna consciousness.
Mm.
So, Maharaj, giving gifts to family, those gifts have to be Krishna conscious gifts, or can they be material gifts as well? Because family expects some material gifts. Like if we are here and we are going and visiting the family.
Well, when I would visit my family, I would always cook a feast for them, right, in the family home, and so I would sort of take over the food part of the family.
That will help again us as well because we are cooking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, what is your question again?
Said that you have to always keep in touch, pray for them, be respectful, give them gifts, and always be friendly. So giving them gifts, can the gifts be, should they only be spiritual gifts like spiritual books?
I can give them Bhagavad Gita, but no, there's other kind of gifts also. I don't know. You don't give them a bottle of champagne, but
No.
you give them nice gifts. Like you can give them a book about uh, India, but spiritual India, right? So now they see, well, wait a minute, there's a big culture behind what my son is doing. And they see different temples, and they see different, let's say, culture. Or you give them a gift. You take them for free to India, and you travel around the different temples, and now they have a chance of doing something they never would have done before, right? So you have to be generous when you're a devotee, and there's different ways of being generous. You might not be rich, so at least you're writing letters to your family, keeping in touch on the telephone, and you're giving little gifts. A little gift, even though it's not really expensive, but that makes a big difference uh, to your family. And it's just a little gift, but it means you're thinking about them, or you send them some prasadam, like sweets. If they eat the sweets that you send them and they like it, then now that they're actually devotees. They don't reject it, right? Uh, so it's just doing little gestures of affection are very important when you become a devotee. Those little gestures of I'm always remembering you, I love you, and like that, and then giving gifts, dadati pratigrinanti, bunte bojayate, and so forth. 6 ways of expressing love, giving and accepting prasadam, right? And giving and accepting endearing thoughts about Krishna. So this giving and accepting is important to show, that you have love for your family and they have love for you. So we should engage in these 6 kinds of loving relationships.
Bring gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad, and offering prasad are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee
Yeah.
and another.
Yeah. So that's what we do in the temple, right? So we can do that with our family also. Of course, you give them some prasadam and they give you back, a bottle of champagne. That's a little bit of a problem there. So when you get the bottle of champagne, it's a dilemma. What do you do with it? If you give it to another person, you'll get, karma, right? If you, um, let's say, just keep it, that's not good either. So if you use it to fertilize your plants, okay, that's good. Just pour it in your garden, and then you can use the bottle to water your plants. So now, but actually, you don't want to water your plants. you can water the grass, but you don't want to water the things that you're going to eat or offer to Krishna. So you have to be careful what you do with it. But yeah, there's always a way of accepting a gift like champagne, but you use it in a different way than what is expected. You don't drink it. You don't water the plants that you're going to eat with it, but you can water the grass, right, with it. And it might even help the grass grow better, but you're not going to eat the grass, right? Yeah, so you always have to be very careful what you do with a substance that is not accepted in Krishna consciousness. Like every year, I would get bottles of liquor or champagne from my supplier. Yeah, they would think, oh, well, he'll be really happy if he receives it. So I would never give it to anyone else because then I would be engaging in helping them become drinking liquor. So basically, I would empty it in grass because I'm not going to eat grass. But I will always thank them for their gift. I wouldn't say, well, I threw it away because I don't drink liquor. No, that's, they did it with goodwill. So you have to accept it with goodwill also, but not participate in drinking liquor. And you can also, eventually you could tell them in a gentle way, well, next time, please don't send me champagne or liquor. I don't drink those things, but you can send me, grape juice. You can send me, uh, something that doesn't violate my principles. So they'll understand if you talk gently, explain to them. So they can send you, some milk or milk sweets and different things that don't violate our principles. So and that way it's educational for them. They learn that okay, well, they don't drink alcohol, and but they do, accept other things like fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, and so forth. So you have to be kind and gentle with people. That way, they don't walk away and say, I really don't like Krishna consciousness because it separated me from my friendship with so and so. You know, it's put a wedge between myself and my own son. That's like the worst thing that can happen. Hare Krishna. Okay, thank you very much. And our takeaway today is such a sadhu engages in staunch devotional service to the Lord without deviation. Haribol. Thank you. Yeah.
So, as you have explained, if family is not Krishna conscious, the devotees will help them to become Krishna conscious. Yes, to become Krishna conscious rather than rejecting them. But second stage is like if they are still not Krishna, they are not favorable.
What do you do?
You have mentioned that we can reject them, renounce them. But my question is, if there are duties are involved, like still the duties are required, family need help, or all the duties are still there. So at that time, we are not taking their close association, but we will continue the duties. Duties will basically take the higher priority rather than anything else, the renouncing or anything. Those are still intact, regardless whether his family is Krishna conscious or they are not favorable. Duties will always take precedence because that's the question. Is that the right understanding?
Well, the What kind of duties you're talking about?
Like family is dependent, right? Like for old parents, son has a duty, or for a young kids, then parents has a duty.
Well, as long as you're not, your duty doesn't help them break the regulative principles, right? So if you give them money and they spend it on liquor, or they, use it for things that are forbidden in Christian conscience, that's not good. So therefore, you can't give them money, but you can give them prasadam, or you can give them other things, that don't violate the principles of Krishna consciousness. You can give them, prasadam. You can give them books, right? You can give them, take them on a trip to India to see holy places, right? So there's so many things you can do that are Krishna conscious, and they'll appreciate because they never went to India before. So it'll be exciting for them, go to India and then visit all these holy places and hear the pastimes of the Lord, and to become acquainted with a whole different culture, So, and they'll remember that the rest of their life. You did this for them. There's many other ways to relate to your parents without rejecting them. You have to be creative, right? I mean, taking them to India, if they agree to go, and hopefully they don't get sick in India, that would be a disaster. And it'll be wonderful, they'll come back and tell all their friends. They went there, they saw so many nice people. They didn't realize how nice people are in India and so forth. And so they'll never forget that. So there's different ways of relating to your parents, but it should always be respectful relations, not be disrespectful. Yeah. Haribol.